Well, if you watched Question Time this week, you obviously got the Brexiteer special where they lined the audience with Brexiteers, most of whom were not very happy, to be honest, with the Brexit. They got, and Alistair Campbell's performance, I will say, on there was absolutely fantastic, pointing out once again that they were lied to. The whole reason that they were upset, mad, and annoyed that they hadn't been promised what the Brexiteers had promised them. Alistair Campbell got it right. It's Nigel Farage, it's Boris Johnson, it's Michael Gove, it's Daniel Hannan, all these Brexiteers who promised the earth of how wonderful, how amazing Brexit was going to be. And once again, it is being heavily pointed out time and time again that, look, when you look at other countries, their inflation far lower than ours. It's going down for them. Ours isn't. Ours is going in the opposite direction. What's the outlier? Why are we different? It's Brexit. And it's very, very quickly becoming very obvious that not only are the Conservatives terrified to actually talk about Brexit, but in the next Parliament, as a lot of us do heavily think and certainly want to happen, that this whole Brexit secretive thing that you can't talk about, the elephant in the room, will finally be talked about, and certainly in an adult way. Because if you look at the polls, most of those Brexiteers are going to get kicked out of Parliament, allowing finally to have adult conversations in the House of Commons about the impacts and problems that Brexit has created. And we've already seen David Lammy say, hey, look, we're going to have to do alignment deals. We're going to have to sort of follow and sign up to follow EU rules. That was always the case. It was going to happen. I don't think the Brexiteers even realized it. And then, of course, as we said, at that point, it's been like, well, why aren't we in the single market and customs union? Boom, we're in the single market and customs union. When we're in single market customs union, why don't we have a seat at the table? Why don't we have veto powers? All this stuff that we could, again, be part of the EU that we lost. And then, boom, we're back at the table. We're back as a full EU member. And as I've said many, many times recently, I want us to do this. I want us to rejoin when Farage is still alive, because that would be the best thing to ever happen, because he would absolutely lose his mind. The saltiness, the articles, it would just be an absolute content goldmine. But, we can but dream one day. But anyway, for the time being, we're going to have a talk about this, because obviously the Conservative Home basically realized that, well, there's a big talk about Brexit regret. And of course, most Tories who are saying and are expressing their Brexit regret. And now, well, they've got to look at, well, what's to blame? Can't be Brexit. Oh, I know. Maybe we'll blame the Tories. Not, the whole Brexit that they created, that they ushered in, that they brought in. It was they who are at fault here, not Brexit. And like I say, sooner or later, you run out of people to blame, and you have to look at, well, maybe it was Brexit that was the problem all along. So, as always, thank you very much for again all the support that you guys do show the channel. Like I say, please do remember to click on the like and share button. And of course, if you are new to the channel, hit the subscribe button. And of course, down below there are links to my Patreon page, the one off donation link called Buy Me Coffee, where you can buy me coffee. There's the YouTube thank you button as well. And of course, there is the Pony Club down below as well. So let's crack on into this then, shall we? So this comes from Conservative Home with the title of "If Tory Voters Have Brexit Regret, it is that the Tories have failed to make a success of it." This is very quickly becoming the new mantra of the Brexiteers. Brexit isn't failing. It's because the Tories or X or whoever, insert whoever you want, have failed to make a success of it. And I guarantee you, when we've got the Labour government, like it looks like potentially at the next general election, it will be the same thing. Oh, Brexit voters suffering from Brexit regret. Well, it's because Labour have failed to make a success of it. They're capitulating to the EU. The headlines write themselves. They literally do. You can already pre-predict them. But anyway, so up first. So James Farney is the director of Public First and the author of Meet the People, a guide to moving public opinion. So let's see what he has to say about all this. So each day, large numbers of people regret their choice of lunchtime sandwich, and large numbers of regret putting on a pair of uncomfortable trousers. And each day, large numbers of people regret voting for Brexit in 2016. And that is true. We can see the polls. More and more and more people are regretting their vote for Brexit. And we always said this, you cannot treat the 2016 vote as if it was something that was set in stone. You cannot just treat it like that. And remember, a lot of these Brexiteers, from Nigel Farage to Jacob Rees-Mogg, said numerous times pre the vote that, oh, we should have two votes. We should have a one, and then we should have a confirmatory referendum. And, multiple votes about what we wanted, that was always denied because they got their votes, they got out of the European Union, and they wanted to chase the hardest Brexit possible. And of course, they could use, oh, we're just following the will of the people. This hard Brexit that we ended up getting, if this was what had been put forward in 2016 by the Leave campaign, they never would have won. And they know that. They know that. That's why they were so desperate never to have a second vote. So, back to it. And each day they forget about all these mistakes after a few minutes and move on with their lives. This is I love it because this is his reasoning for the entire article. Look, you don't understand. This is just a momentary blip. They'll get on with it. They're just, they've got all these other problems. They'll forget about Brexit and they'll just move on with their lives. No, Brexit is here permanently with us. The reason why we are suffering higher inflation, higher pretty much everything else, was because of Brexit. And we always said it, that the problems that the UK was suffering were never caused by the EU. It was caused by Tory austerity, by that particular Tory government, who, again, took the brick of Brexit and put it on the accelerator and has made these problems that we are facing even worse. And you cannot start to fix these problems until you start to acknowledge that there are problems. And this is what we are seeing, that people are regretting their vote for Brexit because, again, they were promised by the campaigners that if we did Brexit, then it would be sunshine, honey, and rainbows forever. That's not what's turned out to happen. And people are catching on. So, while politicians, campaigners, and commentators spend their lives thinking about who's up or down in Westminster, most people worry about things like getting GP appointments, the elderly relatives who have no smartphone, or how they will get their kids to after-school clubs when the roads are chock-a-block. And here's the thing. Certainly GP appointments, well, the NHS has had a large section of potential recruitment cut off from it because of Brexit. And those areas that it used to come, even though we can see under the rules that, people with those medical degrees that we need to come and work in the NHS from Europe, it's now a less attractive option for them to come. So this is how we should read most polls, which probe the concept of Brexit regret. I love this idea that you should just, don't worry if it's a bad result. If it's a bad result about a Brexit poll, regardless of what we see, the fact that we've had numerous polls, because this isn't a one-off poll, this is numerous polls again and again and again that people are regretting their vote, and it keeps on growing. Because we've had 7 years since the Brexit referendum, and we've had 3 years since Brexit officially. And yet, more and more people are regretting their Brexit vote. And people like James here, who wrote this article, cannot even seem to understand himself why people might feel like that. But we'll see. Anyway, so this is how the points of Brexit should be looked at. Polls which show some 2016 Leave voters think that Brexit has gone badly, and that in turn regret their vote choice. For most of these apparently angry Leavers, Brexit regret is on par with the dozens of gentle regrets that they have thought through a typical day. What? No, you compared like regret that they chose the wrong sandwich with regretting to vote Brexit. Here's the thing. You know what they can do the next morning or the next time they go to lunch the next day? They can have that sandwich. The thing is, we have to live with Brexit and its consequences day in and day out until, you know, we can actually get a government that can actually confront Brexit. And it does look like the Labour government are going to confront Brexit. Now, it might not be as tough as certainly some of us would like, but doing alignment deals, doing deals that sort of reduce these trade barriers, following sort of the EU rules and sort of regulations, which will make it easier for businesses, that's a big step in the right direction. So, So, Public First has just run a detailed new poll for the academic think tank UK in a Changing Europe, which was the most extensive and systematic deep dive into public attitudes towards Brexit since we voted to leave the EU 7 years ago. And the results put the concept of Brexit regret into its proper context. So we can divide the 2016 Leave voters into 4 blocks. The biggest by far is the politically detached. Of around 75% of Leave voters fall into this group. I like that. Oh, they're just politically detached. So they don't really care about what's politically going on. So if they blame Brexit for all their problems, then they're really blaming the wrong people. I like that. Anything not to blame Brexit. So these people are for whom it is impossible to discern any really strong feelings at all. They typically think Brexit has gone badly so far, but will probably turn out well in the long run. For them, it's all a bit unclear and too early to tell. And here's the thing. You can say, well, we've had 7 years since the referendum, but it's only been 3 since Brexit properly. What if we do this type of thing again next year and that number increases? What if we do, or should we say, decreases? That, oh yeah, it'll be fine. You know, we've seen these polls before. This isn't a first time we've done this poll, and it's a bit of a shock. We've seen this poll, and it has increased constantly of people regretting their Brexit vote, that they would not vote the same way that they did last time. So there's more to it and more going on. I think this guy really wants to feel. And of course, again, the big problem is Brexit itself. Why are we not talking about Brexit rather than the people who voted for Brexit? Because there may be, you might have to blame Brexit for it. But of course, this guy's a conservative, can't blame Brexit. Okay. So you then have at least 10% of Leave voters who think that Brexit has gone badly and regret their vote. But this 10% is fewer than half. 4% of all Leave voters say that in hindsight that there was no way Brexit could have ever have gone well. And this is critical. It means only 4% of Leave voters have swallowed the hardcore Remainers line that we were all lied to and that we need a vote right now to go back in. The group of Leavers who align with the Continuity Remain campaign are therefore vanishingly small in number. That's not true. You're trying to really soothe your balm there because, like I say, this isn't the first time we've had such a big, vote on this. We can see constantly people are regretting their vote. New people coming in all the time into the voting block, younger people who said, we never got a chance, we never got a say on this. But we can see that Brexit has damaged our economy. And a load of people, of course, as you know, as much as we hate to say it, sometimes a lot of people who voted leave back in 2016 are no longer around. So if you were to hold another, a referendum on should we rejoin the EU, it will not go I think the way that the leave voters want. It will not go the way that they want. So on the face of it, these dissatisfied leave voters could cause concern for the Conservatives and some electoral problems at the next election. Some might even argue that the Tories need to pacify them quickly with a pro-European stance. And here's the thing, there is another vote that's come out recently saying that the people overwhelmingly want the UK to have a better stance and a better relationship with Europe than it currently has. Well, here's the thing, the best relationship we ever had was when we were in the EU. So, as we said with Labour, even if they go ahead, do these alignment deals, and they sort of massively improve the relationship with Europe, you get to a point where you can basically say, this is Brexit. This is as best as it is ever going to be. Because if you go the other way, like these Brexiteers are saying that we've capitulated the EU, you get rid of all these regulations, etc., then this makes it harder to do trade with our biggest trading partner. Doesn't matter that you've signed these Australian trade deals, New Zealand trade deals, etc., what they might have signed by then, and the Pacific Partnership, because they are not improving our economy. In fact, they are actively harming our economy. They are taking jobs away from here and moving them out of the UK. Something which, again, Brexiteers would accuse Remainers of being globalists. But this is it. By far, the biggest globalists out there are the Brexiteers. But there you go. But back to it. So perhaps, but the Conservatives actually have a much bigger problem. It is the 16% of the incandescent Leave voters who feel betrayed by politicians, the incompetence and the mendacity of their collective failure to deliver a Brexit that works. Here's the thing, as we said, Brexit was never ever going to work. It had no plan. There were all these fantasy ideas that were sold to the public were just that, complete fantasy ideas. This is why you end up with the Windsor Framework and practically the idea that Theresa May offered back, which when you could have had Brexit, but of course the Brexiteers didn't want that. The DUP didn't want that. So they collapsed Theresa May's entire government, only to now get what they didn't want 4 or 5 years ago. So let's finish. Let's go back to this. So these, quote, betrayed voters blame the idiot Leave-minded politicians, basically the Conservative leadership, for messing up negotiations, for failing to secure our borders and reduce immigration, and for refusing to innovate to deliver economic growth. Again, you cannot deliver good economic growth, and by innovate he means deregulate. Let's dismiss that ideology that it's they're innovating, no, they're deregulating. This would again have massive consequences on our economy. You've even got Kimmy Badenoch, who's in front of those Brexiteers, and the Brexiteers on the committee in front of her were angry at her because she wouldn't deregulate, and she basically said, "I'm not going to be an arsonist." Because even in the Conservative Party, we have covered this constantly, the constant split that there was for Conservatives because they cannot agree on what Brexit should be, what Brexit should look like. And while they all wanted Brexit, what they didn't realize was that many of their people they were locking arms with wanted something else completely. And this will lead to more infighting, more decisions, because they cannot solve their European question. It is a completely still unresolved argument in the Conservative Party that is sitting and festering like an absolute cancer. And they know it is, and this is going to lead to more problems further down the line. Now, true, at the next election, it looks like they might lose a lot of Brexiteers, certainly from the Parliamentary Party, but we'll see which direction the Conservative Party goes after the next general election. I don't think it will go very well. I very much think they might re-elect Liz Truss. Very do much so think that. Um, but anyway, so many of these betrayed also blame opposition parties for trying to wreck the whole thing. Well, no, they weren't. They were trying to say, "Hey, let's have another referendum. Let's have more choice. Let's really stop and think about what we're doing." And of course, they didn't, because the Brexiteers knew that they could not stop, that they had to keep pushing. Because if they did, and people stopped for a second and thought, well, Article 50 might have not been triggered. If Article 50 hadn't been triggered and we'd maybe stopped and thought about what we were doing, then we might have remained in the single market and customs union. This was all their plan to begin with. You cannot let them stop. You've got to keep on pushing. That was why the will of the people, do the will of the people. You're betraying the will of the people, was such a strong message that they constantly would constantly try and beat the drum with. And the thing is, now they've run out of troops. Now they've actually got the thing, and they've realized, as we said, everyone was for getting Brexit done, but then they've realized, actually, that wasn't what I wanted, or maybe we should do this, maybe we need to do this. They're infighting again, as we always said they would be, because they cannot make their minds up over Europe. So, what does this mean for the Conservatives? Simply put, they must demonstrate to the betrayed that they are doing everything they can to make Brexit work. Naturally, above all, again, and what does that actually mean if you to make Brexit work? Because if you go out and you ask people, you will get myriad of different answers. Naturally, above all, this means by getting control of our borders. Again, the best way to do that, as we've said multiple times, refund the justice and an asylum system. You know, solve start putting money into the things that you don't want to put money in, which would help alleviate all much of these problems. But do they want to do that? No, it's got nothing to do with immigrants just arriving on our shores, because if they brought in safe routes, they refunded the system, this suddenly goes away. But they daren't do it because they like to have an scapegoat. But it also means showing that they have ideas to make the most of the Brexit freedoms to boost the economy. Again, like what? To this guy, it probably means going on a massive deregulatory sort of arsony tour. And if you did that, that would ultimately damage the economy to no end. Again, see what Liz Truss tried to do. So, less tangibly, of course, but just as importantly, it means showing that they are now prepared to fight for British interest whenever they are challenged. Not aggressively so, but with determination and clarity. Uh, again, why should Europe listen to us when we're not in the club anymore? They've got no reason to listen to us if they want to bring in some new regulations, which we then are going to have to follow. It's like I say, if you want to trade with them, well, then you've got to follow these rules. There you go. At least when we're in the EU, we could have a way to to fight for our British interests. But so, to be fair, number 10 clearly understands the need for border control. Then why aren't they doing anything about it? They're doing nothing. This whole pledge of Rishi Sunak to stop the boats is not working. It is the exact same thing that David Cameron promised. and he did nothing to sort of try and improve the situation, even though there was plenty of stuff he could have done, even being in the EU. Priti Patel promised the same thing, and he's seen as a complete absolute failure of a Home Secretary. And meanwhile, you've got Suella Braverman, who currently isn't being seen as a failure of a Home Secretary because Rishi Sunak has now decided to pick up that baton and continue beating the drum that he's going to stop the boats, not Suella Braverman. So she gets a complete free pass where Priti Patel did not. um, so where are we? So yeah, number 10 clearly understand the border control, but they are yet to demonstrate that Brexit freedoms can ever boost the economy in a downturn this hard. But Brexit should be part of that story of a recovering economy. But you can't, because we've explained this many times. Look, how is Brexit going to help recover the economy when you've destroyed supply chains, you've destroyed really good access to a good potential source of labor market, which would help certainly alleviate the source of inflation at the moment. So the final reality check, however, is that Brexit regret or betrayal is not the dominant theme for Leave voters. It matters greatly. It matters a great deal around the margins, and the Conservatives need a strategy to deal with it. So, if you are going to deal with a strategy, then there's only two ways really the Conservatives can go. Either A, they can completely double down and say, we are going to do all the crazy nonsense Brexit things we know would not work, that we have said what we're going to do, and then not done them because we know the consequences of them. Or this is what we can at least hope, but it's very doubtful, to be honest, of happening, that the sane Conservatives are going to retake power and at least recognize that actually we do need sort of a closer relationship with Europe, and eventually this will lead to, once again, as it did before, a very pro-European grouping of Conservative MPs that will ultimately help us to rejoin the EU. And as we said before, rejoining doesn't it can't just be a single party issue. It needs to be multiple party issues. So you need those pro EU stances in all the parties, not just one. But there you go. So fundamentally, however, this research shows that the most important thing for the main political parties is to deliver on the things that the public really care about: the cost of living, the economy, healthcare, antisocial behavior, border control. The next election will be fought in the mainstream. And here's the thing: if you are going to fight in the mainstream at the next general election, who's most responsible for the cost of living crisis? It's the Tories. Who's most responsible for our economic crisis? It's the Tories. Who's most responsible for the bad healthcare systems that we've got at the moment? It's the Tories. Who's most responsible for the antisocial behaviour by slashing police budgets, slashing social service budgets that could massively help reduce that? Oh, it's the Tories. Border control, once again, it's the Tories. As we've said before, at the next general election, what can Rishi Sunak actually fight on? There is no ground he can feel safe on at the next general election. There is no safe ground for him. And if they want to even dare, which I don't think they will, try and fight the culture war stuff, because it has shown multiple times that this culture war stuff has not really been proven to be the electoral winning strategy that they hoped it would, then good luck. Good luck. But all that article was, the real problems around Brexit, it's nothing to do with Brexit, it's the Tories. It's the Tories. The Tories just aren't following through on Brexit. Need to sort their act out. If only they'd done true Brexit, then it would have worked. It's so funny because you see a lot of people on the right say this all about communism. Oh, these communists, they always say, well, why didn't you say communists work? Well, why didn't it work? That's because they weren't true communists. It's the exact same argument. They don't even realize, I think, that they're saying it. But this is what the Brexit argument is very quickly becoming. Brexit isn't failing because of Brexit. It's failing because the people in charge aren't true Brexiteers. They aren't true believers. They aren't implementing the true Brexit. So it's the same story as always. It's not Brexit faults. It's insert whatever problem you have here, or whatever government, whoever happens to be the choice that day. And like I say, I expect, certainly if we do get a Labour government, David Lammy. Oh, well, the reason Brexit's failing is because of David Lammy. Yeah, get ready for that, folks. Get ready. Because oh boy. You know, Conservatives, we don't want to talk about Brexit anymore, but we'll talk about Brexit till the cows come home, and how the fact that it's not Brexit's fault, it's someone else. Yeah. And until until, shall we say, the more saner people, I think, take charge in the Conservative Party, there's going to be no serious conversation, not only about Brexit, but about Europe, and about how UK uh, really needs to act in a vastly changing world. But there you go. So, as always, thank you very much, of course, for watching, and of course, as always, we'll see you all next time.